All right, listeners, buckle up, because today we are diving deep into ancient China.
Deep indeed.
We're talking from the very beginnings. Okay, so let's rewind all the way back to the beginning,
To the very beginning?
like setting the stage.
All right, I'm ready.
Picture this, 8,000 BCE.
8,000 BCE.
Wow! We're talking way before recorded history.
Before writing even.
And already there were these settlements popping up all along China's major rivers.
Really?
The Yangtze, the Yellow River.
Prime real estate.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Even the southeastern coast, they were claiming that riverfront property early on.
They knew what they were doing. These early settlements, they really laid the groundwork for everything that came after.
Totally. They figured out agriculture
Pottery.
and even started experimenting with early forms of writing.
It's amazing to think that the seeds of a civilization that would last for millennia were being planted right then.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And then we get to the Xia dynasty,
Ah, yes, the Shia dynasty.
around 2000 BCE,
Okay, so we're talking 4,000 years ago.
give or take.
Give or take, ancient history for sure.
And this is where things get a little hazy.
Hazy, how so?
It's like the first chapter of a book that's been lost to time.
I see.
We know they existed, the Xia dynasty,
Right.
but solid evidence is hard to come by.
So why is that? Why do we know so little about them?
Well, the Xia dynasty is a bit of a mystery because, unlike later dynasties,
Right.
they didn't have a well-developed writing system.
Ah, that makes sense.
So most of what we know
Yes.
comes from much later texts
Oh, yeah.
and oral traditions,
Hmm.
which makes it
Right.
really tough to separate fact from legend.
It's like trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Exactly. But here's where things take a wild turn.
A wild turn. I'm intrigued.
So in the 1990s,
Okay.
archaeologists were working in western China,
Western China.
in the Tarim Basin,
Okay.
and they made an extraordinary discovery.
Let me guess, more mummies.
Mummies.
Ha ha, I knew it. What's so special about these ones?
Well, these weren't your typical Egyptian-style mummies.
Oh.
These folks had European features,
European, you said?
and their clothing hinted at connections to the Middle East.
What?
I know, right?
Mm-mm.
And get this, they even had weaving patterns similar to the Celts, and they were buried with horses and saddles, suggesting links to Central Asian or Siberian horsemanship.
So it's like finding a piece of Europe in the heart of ancient China.
It's like a time warp.
That is incredible.
No,
It really challenges our assumptions about ancient cultures being isolated.
it really does. Those Tarim Basin mummies point to a world where people, ideas, and goods were already traveling vast distances.
And creating these unexpected cultural mixes.
Exactly. It really paints a picture of a much more interconnected ancient world than we might imagine.
Absolutely. So much more to discover than we often realize.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bit
Fast forward to when?
to the Shang dynasty,
For Shang Dynasty.
around 1570 to 1045 BCE.
Okay, so this is after the Xia Dynasty.
Right, and this is where the story of China, as we know it, really starts to come into focus.
How so?
Because this is when we see the emergence of written records.
Oh, so the myths start to clear a little.
Exactly. And those records are incredible. We have these oracle bones.
Oracle bones, I've heard of those.
They're pieces of bone or turtle shell inscribed with characters
Wow.
that actually evolved into the ones used in Chinese writing today.
No way.
It's amazing.
So we can trace modern Chinese writing back to these oracle bones.
It's mind-blowing to think that those symbols carved into bone thousands of years ago are the ancestors of the characters still used today.
That's incredible. Talk about a lasting legacy. What kind of things did they write on these oracle bones?
They give us a direct window into the Shang dynasty's beliefs, rituals, even their everyday concerns.
It's like reading their diary.
Totally. But the Shang dynasty was more than just writing.
Of course.
They were also masters of bronze work,
Oh, yes. I've seen pictures of those bronze vessels.
creating these intricate weapons
Beautiful and deadly.
and ritual objects that showcase their incredible skill.
They were true artisans.
And let's not forget the chariots.
Ah, the chariots. Essential for warfare back then.
They were possibly adopted from interactions with people from the Xinjiang region
Interesting.
and would have given the Shang a major military edge.
Oh, for sure. Those chariots must have been a sight to behold on the battlefield.
Imagine the thunder of those wheels and the glint of bronze weapons as they charged into battle.
It must have been quite a spectacle. But it sounds like this military might was often used to secure resources.
It was. Things like metal and salt.
Makes sense. Control of vital resources would have been key to maintaining power.
It makes you think about the motivations behind conflict, even in ancient times.
Absolutely. The same things that drive conflict today were at play back then.
Resources, power control.
Human nature hasn't changed much, has it?
Not really.
Yeah,
And speaking of power, the Shang dynasty had a very stratified society,
stratified meaning,
with the king and his family at the top.
the elite.
And this era also saw the emergence of ancestor veneration.
Ancestor veneration.
It's a belief that's still deeply embedded in Chinese culture today.
So this idea goes back thousands of years.
It really does. It's this idea of honoring and respecting those who came before.
It speaks to the importance of family and lineage in Chinese culture.
Though I have to admit,
What's that?
the practice of human sacrifice also prevalent during the Shang dynasty.
Oh, yes.
It's a little harder to wrap my head around.
It's certainly a stark contrast to our modern sensibilities.
For sure. But in the context of the Shang dynasty, ritual sacrifice was seen as a way to appease the gods
Right.
and ensure the well-being of the kingdom.
It highlights the vastly different worldviews that shaped ancient civilizations.
Totally. All right, let's move on to the Zhou dynasty.
Zoo.
They took over from the Shang around 1045 BCE.
So we're moving right along through history.
We are. And they introduced this really interesting concept called the Mandate of Heaven.
The Mandate of Heaven, I've heard that phrase, refresh my memory. What was that all about?
It was a brilliant political strategy. It essentially legitimized Zhou rule by claiming that their power came directly from the heavens.
So it's like divine right to rule.
Exactly. But it also placed a huge responsibility on the ruler to maintain order and act justly,
Or else.
or risk losing that mandate and facing rebellion.
So it was like a divine contract rule, and the heavens smile upon you.
Mess up and you're out. No pressure, right? But how did this mandate of heaven actually play out in practice?
I'm curious, too, how did it shape their system of government?
Well, it led to the development of a feudal system.
A feudal system like in medieval Europe.
Kind of. Powerful warlords were granted significant autonomy
Okay.
in exchange for their loyalty to the Zhou king.
It was. But eventually, as those warlords gained more power,
Oh.
it also contributed to the Zhou dynasty's decline.
It's like that saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Right. It sounds like a constant balancing act, trying to keep all those ambitious warlords in check.
Definitely. A delicate dance of power.
But amidst all this political maneuvering,
Yes.
the late Zhou period, around 600 BCE, also saw some amazing advancements.
Oh, like what?
While this was a period of significant change and growth,
I'm ready for some good news.
rice cultivation took off, leading to a population boom.
How big are we talking? Imagine China with 20 million people.
Wow. That's a lot of people.
And economic power started to challenge the old aristocracy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So a shift in the balance of power.
Silk and jade became hot commodities.
Luxury goods.
And they even started using iron pieces as currency.
Iron pieces as money. That's fascinating. Can you imagine walking around with a pocket full of knife-shaped money?
It's crazy, right? It really shows how adaptable and innovative the ancient Chinese were.
For sure. They were constantly experimenting and finding new solutions.
And it was during this dynamic period that two of China's most enduring philosophies emerged:
Oh. Which ones?
Confucianism and Taoism.
Confucianism and Taoism, two of the most influential philosophies in Chinese history.
Exactly. Confucius, born in 551 BCE, was deeply concerned with restoring order and harmony to society.
A noble goal.
He believed in a system of ethical behavior known as the Tao.
The Tao. Interesting. Tell me more.
It's where everyone had a specific place and responsibility, much like the Hindu concept of dharma.
So a very structured and hierarchical system.
Right? The family was at the heart of this system.
Okay.
And the ideal ruler was seen as a benevolent father figure guiding and nurturing his people.
So like a philosopher king.
Exactly. And what about Taoism? How did that differ from Confucianism?
Well, Taoism, founded by Lao Tzu around the 6th century BCE, took a completely different approach.
Okay, I'm listening.
Instead of striving for social order, Taoism emphasizes living in harmony with the natural world
Interesting. So more about going with the flow.
and embracing inaction rather than forcing things.
For an action.
Not exactly doing nothing, but more about not interfering with the natural order of things.
I see. So it's less about imposing your will on the world and more about aligning yourself with it.
Exactly. Lao Tzu famously said, "A journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step."
I love that quote. It highlights the importance of a gradual, effortless approach to life.
It's about patience, persistence, and trusting the process.
The Confucianism is about structure and order.
While Taoism is about going with the flow.
It's fascinating how these two seemingly opposite philosophies emerged from the same period of upheaval.
It speaks to the diversity of thought and the search for meaning that characterized this era.
But how did they both manage to take root and influence Chinese thought for centuries to come?
That's a great question, and one we'll delve into as we continue exploring this remarkable civilization.
I'm ready when you are. It's amazing how these ancient ideas still resonate with us today.
It's a testament to their enduring wisdom and relevance.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork.
We've set the stage.
Now it's time to dive deeper into the next chapter of ancient Chinese history.
I can't wait. It's really remarkable how both these philosophies, Confucianism and Taoism, they found their place in Chinese culture. It's not like you have to pick one or the other. It's more like recognizing the value of both perspectives.
Yeah, like you need structure and you need flexibility, which totally makes sense when you think about how important balance and harmony are in Chinese thought.
Absolutely. It's about finding that middle ground, embracing those seeming opposites.
I'm curious, though, how these philosophies played out in times of, well, let's just say less harmony.
Ah, you mean like periods of conflict and instability?
Exactly. Like what happened when things got a little less zen.
Well, that brings us to the Warring States period.
The Warring States period sounds intense.
It started around 475 BCE.
Okay, so a few centuries after Confucius and Lao Tzu.
Right, and it lasted for over 2 centuries. Imagine that.
Over 2 centuries of warfare.
Constant rivalry, different kingdoms battling it out for dominance.
That's a long time to be at war.
It was a tumultuous time, for
Right.
sure. This era marked the decline of the Zhou dynasty and really created a breeding ground for military strategists and thinkers.
So basically, Game of Thrones, but in ancient China.
Huh, you could say that.
Yeah.
And it was during this chaotic time that Sun Tzu wrote his masterpiece, The Art of War.
The Art of War. I've heard of that. Isn't that still studied today?
Oh, absolutely. It's considered a timeless guide to strategy influencing military leaders and even business strategists for centuries.
I love that quote from The Art of War. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting.
It's so profound. It's really more of a philosophy than just a military manual.
Totally. It's about outsmarting your opponent, not just overpowering them.
Exactly. Sun Tzu understood that warfare went beyond brute force.
So what did he emphasize?
He emphasized things like deception, intelligence gathering, and choosing your battles wisely.
So it's more about strategy and cunning than just brute force.
Precisely. It's about using your mind as your most powerful weapon.
Makes sense. But eventually someone had to emerge victorious from all this warring, right?
Right, and that someone was Qin Shi Huang.
Qin Shi Huang, I've heard that name.
He was the first emperor of China.
First emperor. So he was the one who finally brought an end to the Warring States period.
He did. In 221 BCE, he managed to unify all those warring states and establish the first unified Chinese empire.
Wow, that's incredible. After centuries of division and conflict, he managed to bring everyone together.
It was a monumental achievement. It really changed the course of Chinese history.
He must have been a brilliant strategist.
Oh, he was. But alongside his military might, he also embraced a philosophy known as legalism.
Legalism. How is that different from Confucianism or Taoism?
Well, unlike Confucianism, which emphasizes moral virtue and ethical behavior, legalism takes a much more pragmatic and even cynical view of human nature.
So if Confucianism is about the golden rule, what's the legalist version?
Legalists believe that humans are inherently selfish and prone to wrongdoing. They need strict laws and harsh punishments to keep them in line.
So it's kind of like a tough love approach to governance.
You could say that they believe that a strong and authoritarian state is necessary to maintain order and prevent chaos.
Sounds pretty intense.
Yeah.
How did Qin Shi Huang put legalism into practice?
Well, he used it to consolidate his power and eliminate any opposition.
So a very top-down approach to government.
Exactly. He standardized weights and measures, created a unified currency, and even built a network of roads to connect his vast empire.
Wow, those are some ambitious projects.
They were. He also oversaw the construction of the Great Wall of China.
The Great Wall. That's incredible. So that was his idea.
It was a massive undertaking aimed at keeping out those nomadic invaders from the north.
It's amazing to think about the scale of these projects and the sheer manpower it must have taken to complete them.
It's a testament to the power of a centralized state and the ability to mobilize resources on a massive scale.
But all this control and authority,
Yeah.
it must have come at a cost, right? What about individual freedom and expression?
You're right. Qin Shi Huang's reign was known for its brutality. His strict laws and harsh punishments created a lot of resentment among the people.
So it was a trade-off stability and order at the expense of individual liberty.
It was. It's a debate that continues to this day. What's the right balance between individual freedom and the needs of the state?
Big questions. But empires, like everything else, eventually come to an end. What happened after Qin Shi Huang?
After his death in 210 BCE, the Qin dynasty crumbled pretty quickly. It was followed by the Han dynasty.
The Han Dynasty, a new era.
It was founded by Liu Bang, a commoner who rose to become Emperor Gaozu.
A commoner becoming emperor. That's quite a change from the authoritarian rule of Qin Shi Huang.
It was. It marked a shift in approach and a softening of that strict legalist philosophy.
So what did the Han Dynasty bring to the table? What was their style of governance?
The Han dynasty lasted for over 4 centuries, from 202 BCE to 221 CE.
Wow, that's a long time. They must have been doing something right.
They are often considered a golden age in Chinese history.
A golden age. I'm intrigued.
While they kept some of the administrative structures from the Qin dynasty, they moved away from legalism and embraced Confucianism as their guiding philosophy.
So they combined the efficiency of the Qin with the more humane approach of Confucianism.
Exactly. They found a way to balance those different approaches.
It sounds like a winning combination.
Right.
What were some of the Han Dynasty's biggest achievements?
Well, Emperor Wu Di, who reigned from 141 to 87 BCE, was a particularly influential ruler.
Emperor Wu Di. What made him stand out?
He was a visionary leader. Under his rule, China's borders expanded, trade flourished along the Silk Road, and the population boomed.
The Silk Road. Now we're talking. That ancient network of trade routes connecting East and West.
It was a time of incredible cultural exchange, goods and ideas flowing between China and the Roman Empire.
It's amazing to think about all those exotic goods and ideas traveling those ancient trade routes. Silks, spices, precious metals.
And along with those goods came new ideas, new technologies, new ways of thinking.
It really highlights how interconnected the world was becoming even back then.
It's a reminder that globalization isn't a new phenomenon. It's a process that's been happening for centuries.
So Emperor Wu Di sounds like he was a pretty successful ruler. But I'm guessing it wasn't all smooth sailing. Every ruler faces their challenges, right?
Absolutely. Emperor Wu Di had to deal with constant threats from the Xiongnu nomadic tribes on China's northern frontiers.
So those threats from the north were still a major concern.
They were, and his reign was also marked by internal struggles, including a peasant revolt triggered by excessive taxation.
So that tension between the rulers and the ruled, especially when it comes to taxes, it seems to be a recurring theme throughout history.
It is. No empire is immune to those challenges. It's all about finding that balance between maintaining order and meeting the needs of the people.
Finding that sweet spot is never easy. But alongside those struggles, the Han Dynasty also made incredible strides in innovation, right?
Absolutely. This was the era that saw the invention of paper.
Paper. That's a game changer. I can't even imagine a world without paper.
It's hard to overstate the impact of that invention.
It's everywhere. Books, art documents, even toilet paper.
It revolutionized communication, record-keeping, and so many aspects of daily life.
It's incredible to think that such a fundamental part of our lives originated in ancient China. What other innovations emerged during this time?
Well, the textile industry, particularly silk production, thrived during the Han Dynasty.
Chinese silk was highly prized throughout the ancient world, wasn't it?
It was. They developed sophisticated techniques for breeding silkworms and producing incredibly fine and luxurious silk.
So they were the fashionistas of the ancient world.
You could say that. Their silk was a symbol of wealth and status, and it played a major role in their trade networks connecting them to the wider world.
So the Han Dynasty had all military power, economic prosperity, cultural achievements,
Yeah.
and they even helped shape global trade. It's no wonder it's considered a golden age. But like all golden ages, it eventually came to an end.
It did. Around 220 CE, the Han Dynasty fell, ushering in a new period of instability and fragmentation.
So what happened next? Did China fall into chaos?
Well, after the Han Dynasty collapsed, China entered a period known as the Era of the Six Dynasties. It was a turbulent time with various kingdoms vying for power.
Sounds a bit like the Warring States period all over again.
It was similar in some ways, but this period also laid the groundwork for another remarkable era in Chinese history, China's Golden Age.
Another golden age. Tell me more.
Yeah.
I'm always up for hearing about golden ages.
This one encompassed the Sui Tang and Song dynasties. It was a time of incredible cultural flourishing, technological innovation, and economic prosperity.
Wow. 3 dynasties all considered part of a golden age? That must have been pretty impressive.
They were. Each dynasty had its own unique contributions and accomplishments. But together, they represent a period of unprecedented growth and achievement in Chinese history.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's start with the Sui dynasty. What made them stand out?
Well, the Sui dynasty, though short-lived, was known for its ambitious building projects. The most impressive of these was the completion of the Grand Canal.
The Grand Canal, I've heard of that. It's that massive waterway that connects the north and south of China, right?
It is. It stretches for over 1,400 miles, connecting the Yellow River to the Yangtze River.
1,400 miles. That's mind-blowing. It must have been an incredible feat of engineering.
It was. It was a monumental undertaking that required immense resources and manpower, but it also had a huge impact on China's economy and transportation system.
It's amazing to think about the vision and determination it must have taken to complete such a massive project. It really speaks to the Sui dynasty's ambition and power.
Absolutely. It's a testament to their ability to mobilize resources and achieve great things.
So the Sui dynasty may have been short-lived, but they definitely left their mark on history.
They did. And then came the Tang dynasty. They really took things to the next level.
The Tang dynasty. All right, let's hear about them. What made their era so golden?
The Tang dynasty lasted from 618 to 907 CE, and they are often considered the peak of Chinese civilization. They expanded their influence into Tibet, established tributary relationships with Korea and Southeast Asia, and fostered a flourishing of art, literature, philosophy, and politics.
Wow. So they were a major force both militarily and culturally.
They were. Their empire stretched far and wide, and they had a profound impact on the surrounding regions. They also embraced Buddhism, which played a significant role in their culture and arts.
It sounds like a time of incredible dynamism and expansion, a true golden age. What about the Song dynasty? How did they contribute to this remarkable era?
The Song dynasty came after the Tang and lasted from 960 to 1279 CE. They may have been less militarily powerful than the Tang, but they were an economic powerhouse.
So they focused more on trade and internal development.
Exactly. And they were incredibly innovative. They made groundbreaking advancements in a number of fields.
Okay, spill the tea. What were some of these Song dynasty innovations?
Well, for starters, they were responsible for the first use of paper money in history.
Paper money. Wow. So they basically invented the concept of a paper currency.
They did. Imagine the impact that had on global finance. It revolutionized the way people conducted business and exchanged goods.
It's incredible to think that such a fundamental part of our modern economy originated in the Song dynasty. What other innovations did they come up with?
They also established the first permanent Chinese navy, demonstrating their maritime ambitions and their desire to project power overseas.
So they were a force to be reckoned with on both land and sea.
They were. And if that wasn't enough, they also pioneered the use of gunpowder and the compass for determining true north.
Gunpowder and the compass. Two more game-changing inventions. It's amazing how much we owe to the Song dynasty. They were truly ahead of their time.
Their innovations had a profound impact on the course of history. But even with all their advancements, the Song dynasty eventually faced a powerful threat from the north, the Mongols.
Ah, the Mongols.
Yeah.
Genghis Khan and his warriors, they really shook things up. What made them such formidable opponents?
The Mongols were masters of horsemanship and archery. They were incredibly disciplined and adaptable to different terrains and fighting styles.
So they were basically the ultimate fighting force of their time.
They were. Their military prowess was unmatched. And their leader, Genghis Khan, was a brilliant strategist who united the Mongol tribes and led them on a campaign of conquest that stretched from Asia to Europe.
An empire that spanned continents? That's mind-blowing. But what about China? What happened to the Song dynasty under Mongol rule?
Well, it was Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, who ultimately established Mongol rule over China in 1263 CE. He founded the Yuan dynasty and chose the city of Xanadu as his capital.
Xanadu. The name itself conjures up images of exotic palaces and bustling trade routes. What was it like for China under Kublai Khan's rule?
Kublai Khan was a shrewd ruler. He recognized the value of integrating aspects of Chinese governance into his own system.
So he wasn't just interested in imposing Mongol rule on China.
Yeah.
He wanted to create a more blended system.
Exactly. He adopted their administrative structure, tolerated Confucianism alongside his own Buddhist faith, and even had Marco Polo serving in his court.
Marco Polo, that Venetian merchant who traveled to China and wrote about his adventures. His accounts really captured the imagination of Europe.
They did. His travels offer a fascinating glimpse into this unique period of Mongol rule in China.
What were some of the key developments during Kublai Khan's reign?
Kublai Khan focused on expanding trade along the Silk Road, promoting ambitious building projects and supporting the arts and sciences. His rule was a fascinating blend of Mongol and Chinese traditions.
It sounds like a time of great transformation and cultural exchange. But as we've seen throughout history, dynasties rise and fall. What eventually happened to the Yuan dynasty?
After Kublai Khan's death in 1294 CE, the Yuan dynasty gradually weakened. They faced internal rebellions and economic challenges and were eventually overthrown by the Ming dynasty in 1368 CE.
So that marked the end of Mongol rule in China.
It did. And with the rise of the Ming dynasty, a new chapter in Chinese history began.
Man, what a ride. From those mysterious Xia dynasty beginnings to the Mongol conquest, it feels like we've time traveled through thousands of years of Chinese history.
It's quite a story, isn't it? So much innovation, so much upheaval, so much resilience.
Maybe you'll be inspired to explore further, to delve deeper into the mysteries and marvels of ancient China.
There's a whole world of knowledge out there just waiting to be discovered.
So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep questioning.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to make the next big discovery.
Well, that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through ancient China.
Until next time, keep exploring.